Joined now by Jon Morosi, our Major League Baseball insider. John, a lot of expectations for the LA Dodgers. Looking at the standings, the entire National League is kind of a mess, right? I mean, there's basically no teams that have really distinguished themselves in a substantial way. But how nervous should Dodger fans be about the team falling to 17 and 15, third in the NL West?
Well, Clay, good morning. And first of all, congratulations again on your great news this week with Outkick. This is a tremendous tribute to your work ethic and creativity. So well done, my friend.
Well, I appreciate that. It's exciting for the family, but still up super early in the morning doing radio. So nothing.
There you go.
Nothing going to change in the grand scheme.
Look forward to continuing our conversations during the course of the year, as always. And yeah, so for the Dodgers, it's interesting, Clay. A couple things. Number one, I actually went back and looked and said, okay, well, how long has it been since the Dodgers were anywhere other than first or second place after this many games of the season? And interestingly enough, that actually happened in 2019. So it wasn't that long ago that they had a similar stretch where fans were asking what was going on and where they go from here. I think what's different about this, Clay, is the injury to Bellinger, which has obviously sidetracked the team early on, and then Mookie Betts not being able to play at full strength. Of course, he had the arm issue after the hit by pitch. He had the back injury as well. And Mookie is one of the best people in the game, and he just wants to be on the field for his team. And I think that we realize just watching him, he's not 100% healthy right now. And so it's a combination of when you've got an MVP out and then an MVP who's not at full strength, it's going to hurt your team. And I think on the mound, too, we have seen some injuries. Of course, the Dustin May injury, out for the season, Tommy John surgery, which he's going to have next week. There's just a number of injuries and tough breaks early on, and then I think on the flip side, Clay, the Padres have been about as advertised, and the Giants have been a lot better. So it's going to be a tougher road for the Dodgers this year. They may still win the championship. When they're healthy, there's probably still not a better 1 through 26 roster. But I also think that there are a couple unforeseen things, such as injuries and then the quality of the Giants, rather, that has made this a much more difficult year. And I do think some degree of concern is appropriate if you're a Dodger fan right now.
Given that we've played roughly 30, 32, whatever the exact number is for everybody's favorite team staying on the National League, would you change your assessment of the best teams? So you just said the Dodgers may still win the World Series. I think you picked the Braves to win the World Series. Pitching has been weak there. How would you assess the first 30-ish games? Would you make any changes based on your preseason expectations in the National League?
You know, Clay, not yet. I feel actually pretty decent about my preseason picks, which is odd because I almost always get them wrong. I notably did predict Shohei Ohtani to win the AL MVP, and that was one. Of course, that was just my own idea. I don't actually stand to gain anything from it, but that was I feel good looking at how things have gone so far. But I think you look at the rest of the circumstances in the NL, and for the Braves, and as you know, Clay, watching that team so closely, with all the injuries they've had, Max Fried just coming back. Mike Soroka, of course, also being injured. They're a team that has really underperformed what they can do, and yet they're only a game under 500. And the first place team in that division at the moment, the Phillies, they haven't even played that well either. And so if your assessment coming into the season was that the NL East was going to basically be very well balanced and that the winner is going to maybe win somewhere in the neighborhood of 87, 88 games because they're just going to beat up on each other all season long, that's basically what we've seen so far. There's only 2.5 games separating first and last place in that division. Everybody's still in there. So I think my feeling on the Braves, especially once they get more of a normal routine of Fried and Soroka pitching at some point, then I think they're going to really take off. In the Central, I was very bullish on the Brewers for a long time. They've cooled off a little bit, and for me, I'm really worried about Christian Yelich right now, Clay. Of course, a former MVP. He's now had a number of different back issues and back injuries that have plagued him, and he came back. He played one game, went right back on the IL. He's a really young player to be having back issues like this. And I heard Joe Girardi say something recently along the lines of, and it wasn't pertaining to Yelich, it was just a general statement, that once you're a back patient, you're always a back patient, and I'm afraid that that's the case for a former MVP who also is one of the classy people in the game as well. So it's a tough bit of news for the Brewers there, and the Cardinals in recent days have gotten some momentum. The one big surprise, though, has been the Giants. Just their rotation, Clay, has been really surprising, and you've got to credit Gabe Kapler there for getting the Giants now potentially back towards the playoffs.
Well, we're talking to Jon Morosi, our Major League Baseball insider. Braves are going to 100% capacity today in their series against the Phillies, which begins later this afternoon. And also, we've already had the Rangers at basically 100% capacity for a while. When do you think the majority of Major League Baseball teams will be at full capacity? What are you hearing about crowds in MLB stadiums?
Well, Clay, it's certainly going to still be somewhat location dependent. Whenever the
yeah, tell her we said hi.
Gabrielle, you can, sweetheart. Daddy's on the air. You can please get some cereal, okay? This is obviously, Clay, normal times of the road.
That is every house every house in America for the past year.
Oh my gosh! So,
what cereal does she get, by the way? What's her go-to?
We'll see more and more teams moving towards 100% capacity. I would say that we will probably see, depending on where you're at in the country, we're seeing more and more teams up now, even around like 30 to 40%. And as you mentioned, with the Braves 100%, the Rangers 100%. So I think by the middle of the year, I've long believed that, obviously following the data as we all have and looking at it, that I think by the middle part of the summer we'll see more and more stadiums able to do it, because I think that we're seeing that with the safety protocols baseball's put in place, you can do it safely, especially when it's outside in the summertime. So I think baseball does have the calendar in its favor right now, Clay, and I'm optimistic that we'll see more crowds able to be up at least closer to 100% by the middle part of the season.
How surprised are you that the Red Sox have the best record in baseball?
Incredibly surprised. I mean, this is a team, Clay, that I thought was going to be fourth place potentially in this division this year, and their pitching has really surprised me. Nick Pivetta has come along, and that's been impressive for me. But I think the one thing that probably I underrated coming into spring training was the quality of their lineup. J.D. Martinez is back to being an MVP. So is Xander Bogaerts. Rafael Devers is playing like an all-star again over at third base. That's a group of three players that when they're going, there are not many teams in the AL. I would actually say probably no teams in the AL that have three players that talented and from an offensive standpoint. So, and in a division where really the Rays have taken a step back, the Yankees have been, by their own standards, pretty mediocre. So there's more of an opportunity there. The Blue Jays, they have not had George Springer, of course, their major free agent signing. He's been injured a lot of the season. So there's an opportunity there, and you got to credit the Red Sox for finding the best way to fill that gap and put together a pretty significant start to the season.
Last question for you. We are sitting right now in 30-ish games into the season. More valuable to look at run differential or overall record? And if we looked at run differential, the White Sox would be the best team in the American League, and the best team in the National League would still be the Dodgers. Do you look at run differential more or total record? Which is a better indicator right now, 30-ish games in?
Yeah, it's a great question, Clay. I look at run differential, especially this early on. You know, at some point, to borrow the Parcells line, you become what your record says you are. But that's usually more towards when you get a little closer to the trade deadline. I start to say, okay, if you're outperforming your run differential, maybe there is something just to the way this blend of players is coming together, and then you start to believe the standings a bit more. But for now, you do look at run differential and expect things to normalize a bit. And I think one thing about the White Sox that I'm really intrigued by, Clay, is do we see Tony La Russa pursue a reunion with Albert Pujols? Now, of course, we saw the news yesterday about Albert being cut by the Angels. Do we see the White Sox bring Albert Pujols in and Tony and Albert together again for what would be the first time since 2011. So really interesting times there on the south side.
Good stuff. Get your daughter that cereal. Thank you for coming on with us, Jon Morosi. We'll talk to you again soon.
I had to find there's one spot of the house where when the kids are all in commotion, I can kind of dart away to and get a couple minutes of quiet. So I'm glad that I was able to do that. And thanks to you and our listeners for their patience this morning.
No worries at all. That is every parent in America, like I said, for the past year. Good stuff. Enjoy the games this weekend.